I'm Zoe Amar. I'm the founder and director of Zoe Amar Digital. It's a consultancy working with charities and non-profits on digital strategies. And obviously, over the last year or so, AI has been a big topic that we've been advising charities and non-profits about. There are so many exciting possibilities, but also quite a lot of risks to manage as well. So in today's session, I'm going to be talking to you about ethics and efficiency and how non-profits can responsibly use AI across the different areas of their work. So I'm really excited to be talking about that with you today. So there are three key things I'm going to be focusing on in today's session. Firstly, I'm going to set the scene. I'm going to share a bit of context around AI opportunities and risks. And some of that is going to be based on the work that we do with charities and some stories I have to share about that, but also some data that we've got about use of AI in the UK charity sector. Then I'm going to be talking about some trends around ethical and responsible use of AI and how you can align that with your mission and values. I truly believe that the non-profit sector is very distinct and very different from how the corporate world and the public sector may need to adopt AI, in that values and adopting AI in line with your mission, but also what's truly important to you and how you can work in this area ethically is very, very critical to adopting these tools in a way that means that they will make the biggest difference to the people you serve and also ultimately to your staff and volunteers too. And then on that note, I'm going to talk about some tips on managing risk in AI as well. And that should be at the heart of how you use AI responsibly. So those are the three areas I'm going to be talking about today. Firstly, I want to start just by setting the scene briefly with some stats around AI, because I think this speaks to some of the risks that the nonprofit world is going to have to manage as AI gets adopted further. So you'll probably have seen some of these stats here. So, for example, Investment Bank, Goldman Sachs did a really interesting study not that long ago about AI and how it could potentially replace 300 million jobs and how it's going to have a big impact on what the world of work and all of the responsibilities and tasks that we do every day and what that's going to look like. Now, we don't yet know what the exact extent of the change is going to be, but we know it's going to change things quite a lot. And as you can see here, there's also some really interesting research coming out about how AI is going to improve productivity. We're already starting to see the impact of that in the not-for-profit sector. I've got some examples about that later. And we've got all these exciting new products that have come to market, such as Microsoft's Copilot and Google Gemini as well. And yet there is a real tension at the heart of this innovation. And I think that non-profits can be caught in the crux of that, with a need to do new technologies really effectively, but also ethically as well. And we have to work to a much more different and higher standard than might be expected of organisations in other sectors. And on that note, you'll have heard that some big companies in the AI space, such as OpenAI, have raised concerns about what AI could mean for society and jobs as well, and actually called for more regulation. And of course, there could be some real challenges that we see happening this year about the amount of disinformation and misinformation that will be happening online as a result of so many countries going to the polls. And of course, AI will be at the heart of that around deepfakes and AI generated content. And that has a big this is a big problem, I think, for the nonprofit world, because so much of what we all do is about speaking truth to power. And that is going to be a really interesting challenge for us all online this year. So bringing this home to the non-profit sector, and this is based on some data from the Charity Digital Skills Report, which is an annual barometer of digital skills, attitudes and adoption in the UK charity sector. What we have started to see as a bit of an emerging trend around AI and emerging tech is that there's massive interest in AI compared to the year before. So this data is from the 2023 report. And in fact, we'll have the 2024 report coming out this summer. The survey is currently running. But what we're also seeing that charities are sort of thinking about, well, what is the impact going to be on us in terms of what does it mean for staff? What does it mean for how it might improve productivity? However, there is an innate challenge around time and headspace, and whether charities really have the capacity to understand how this is going to change things for the sector, because there are so many pressures on non-profits at the moment. Certainly in the UK side of things, the cost of living crisis really means that charities are facing a real crunch, and they don't have the headspace to necessarily learn about AI and emerging tech to the extent that they would like to. So that is very much the challenge that's outlined in that last stat there. And then if we look at specifically how AI could transform charities, well, the big headline we saw from last year's report was that the majority of charities felt that AI was really relevant to them, but didn't feel prepared to respond to the opportunities and challenges. However, there were more charities than we thought there would be who are already using AI. And I'm going to give you some examples of that in a moment in the context of specific individual charities, but also some additional sector trends that we have seen as well. And I'll talk about what that means for you too. But the main takeaways here are that whilst there's clearly that appetite there for charities to use AI more, and some charities are already using it, there are also a lot of things that need to be done in order to get to that point where you can really use these technologies meaningfully and ethically. And some of that's about skills, some of that is about having the time to learn together, and some of that is also about being AI ready. And what I mean by that can be putting those building blocks in place around things like data maturity, thinking about the role it plays in your strategy, and also making sure you're skilling up your staff as well. One of the things that perhaps worries me a bit is that we are seeing that it's in some ways a little easier for large charities to use AI simply because they're better resourced, they've got more people, compared to small charities. And part of adopting AI responsibly as a sector is about making sure that no non-profit gets left behind. So my plea to you today, if you're from a large non-profit, is to reach out to some smaller non-profits and to see if you can help them take some first steps on this journey and to learn together as well. So those are the trends. I'm now going to pick out some specific examples about how charities are using AI. And I've got a range of non-profits here to share with you. So there's an amazing charity based here in the UK called Speakers Trust. And what they do is they send volunteers into schools to develop the public speaking skills of young people, such a critical skill even in this digital day and age. And they're a really small team with big ambitions. And what they have found is that AI is helping them grow their productivity, but also ultimately develop their social impact as well. So they've been using it for some of those what you might call mundane tasks, such as summarising meeting notes and drafting marketing content, but they're also exploring how they might be able to use AI to develop an interactive tutor to build on their work in the classroom, to make sure that students have a regular place where they can ask questions and keep continuously developing their public speaking skills. So it's really exciting to see a charity who's thinking about how it can improve and make easier their day-to-day activities, but also look at where they can use AI to ultimately help achieve their vision and mission too. So then let's look at a non-profit who are using AI for fundraising. Now, this case study has been making waves in the UK for very good reason. So Parkinson's UK, very well-known health charity in the UK, and what they've been doing is using AI in a number of different ways. And in doing so, they've really shown how you can live their values and how you adopt AI. So the first thing that they've been doing is using AI to try and understand what their communities need. So, for example, they've used some AI tools to look at what the community they serve has been saying about the needs they have online, such as, I think, special exercise programs for people living with Parkinson's, and they've offered and developed services accordingly. And then what they've also done is use AI to grow their fundraising. So what they've done there is they have looked at previous donor behaviour. They've seen how often they're giving, what's motivated them to give, and then they have used AI tools in order to better target their direct mail campaigns. And that's meant they've firstly raised more money, as you can see here, but what they've also done is been able to better target that list. So they've also saved money in actually sending that campaign out to less people, but nevertheless generating more income, which is really, really exciting. They have taken quite a sensible, cautious, very ethical approach to this. So what they have done is they have really been rigorous about making sure they comply with GDPR and looking at just existing supporter data rather than acquiring new supporters using AI tools. So actually, I think this is a very good example of how if you adopt AI ethically and responsibly in line with your values, you can nevertheless do a very good, very strong fundraising campaign and also learn more about what motivates your donors to respond and donate to. This is a really interesting example of how you can adopt AI for social impact. So Ardgowan Hospice are a small hospice based in Scotland, and what they are currently doing is exploring how AI platforms can help them pull together patient stories and memories and curate them effectively and leave them behind for the loved ones of patients. And they know that there's a need for that because they've heard from patients and also the loved ones of those patients that it's so important to preserve those memories and help them be passed down through families in the future. And they've also explored how they can use functionalities such as speech to text to be able to transcribe those stories as well and give them life through the voice of patients, which I think is a really, really beautiful idea. Clearly, there's potential to use those stories for fundraising as well, with the permission of patients. But ultimately, this is an area which is really ambitious and really exciting and very much aligned with their vision and mission as an organisation, but where this charity are very aware of how there may be ethical issues and how they will need to take things step by step in order to explore how they go about it. So a very exciting way in which AI can be used to help grow social impact if you take the right approach to risk management and treading very carefully. So how are charities already using AI? Well, as you can see here, there are buckets of different ways in which those can be used. Everything from productivity, some of the things I talked about earlier, but also where you can start to use these tools for things like writing funding bids, as several charities I've already spoken to this week already doing, and for idea generation as well. So whether that's through things like helping develop your strategy or doing some competitor analysis, as someone I was speaking to earlier this week was doing as well. So there are some ways in which ultimately these tools can almost feel like an additional member of your team. Clearly, you have to be very mindful of the kind of data you can put into these tools safely and ethically. But as you can see here, this is a real range of different ways in which you can use AI, and they're all based on the examples we're hearing from charities day to day of how they're already using these technologies. What I would say as nonprofits start to develop their use of AI further is that there are some really big questions that we need to all proceed quite carefully with in terms of risk management. Number one, are we going to see, because of the speed, the quality of some of the responses that are coming out of these tools, the donors and also supporters and people who use charity services are going to go direct to those tools and look for answers? And does that mean information and advice from nonprofits is going to look really different? So there's something here about expectations of the people who are supported by and work in and around charities are going to change, how there might be growing expectations around speed and personalisation and 24/7 support as well. And then there are those big strategic questions that we touched on earlier. How might AI change our charities in the future in terms of the shape of our staff and volunteer team, the skills we need on that team, but also what new competitors might come into this space as well, which I think could be really interesting, particularly if we look at an area like health, for example, where AI is already beginning to be adopted further. The answer to all of this lies in how we support our people and we grow their skills. So how can we create the space and time for staff to learn about AI that I mentioned earlier, and also to work together to test these new ways of using these new technologies so that you can quickly start to build a body of evidence for what works and what doesn't work, and where you can use these tools safely and ethically. And those decisions are going to be very unique to your context, the way your nonprofit manages and measures risk, and also how these tools might align with where you're ultimately going with your organisational strategy. And that speaks to this very important point around the governance you build around that as a non-profit. What does your policy look like? Are your trustees skilled up in this area? And how can senior people provide the right strategy, scrutiny and support so that the right decisions are taken in a considered way in a time when technological change is moving faster and faster? So what should leaders do next? Before we close, there's some key things which I think nonprofit leaders need to consider. Firstly, look at how you can give your team that space and time to learn together. And the learning together is the critical thing, because there's so much happening in this space. No one should be approaching AI as an individual siloed activity. We've all got to try these tools out together and learn as we go. And that means giving your staff the right guidance, the right parameters on what they can do with these tools, such as what data they should and shouldn't put into them, but also making sure there are those incentives for them to learn alongside other people and to be recognised for the commitment and initiative and innovation that they are really demonstrating in doing that. As I mentioned, you'll need to review your governance as you do that to create the right conditions, the right culture, the right working environment for that innovation. But you're also going to need to look outwards as well as inwards. So looking at what else is going on in the world of nonprofits, who else is using AI that you can learn from, and keeping an eye on those wide sectoral and societal trends around how AI is used so that you can start to understand how those developments might impact your nonprofit as well. So we've talked today about trends, we've talked about opportunities and risks, we've talked about how you can adopt AI responsibly, and we've talked about how you can manage risk. Please do take a look at all the AI resources on our website, and please do keep in touch as well, because I would love to hear how you get on with AI, and I wish you and your nonprofit every success in doing that. Thank you for listening.